Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. As the drama continues to rage on behind the scenes at Red Bull, if there was any opportunity to take advantage of it from other Formula 1 teams, now is that chance. Rumour has it that Ferrari have indeed given a major offer to Adrian Newey over the last few days that he will need to consider, but it is not the only offer on the table. Major updates in the last 24 hours. Saudi Aramco are looking to completely take over the Aston Martin Formula 1 team. If that is the case, they will offer a blank cheque to Max Verstappen, to Adrian Newey, and they will pull out all the stops to make that the best Formula 1 team in the world. Will this happen in the coming days? Very much into your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. Some sensational content here from Valtteri Bottas in that advert that we've seen over the last day or so. Bottas himself even discussing how long he intends to continue on in the sport and believes that he can easily race for another 5 years. The question, of course, is where? What's going to happen with Sauber? The belief is they want to get Hülkenberg in for the Audi Sauber thing. Zhou may well not stay. Bottas may well. He's still, I would say, the stronger driver of the pairing they have, but it's arguably the weakest pairing on the grid. However, what is not the weakest pairing is the Ferrari duo. Sainz is rumoured to be, well, basically, the plan is he's back in the car this weekend. Here's the no appendix club with Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz. Now, Ollie Behrman is in the paddock. It's an F2 race this weekend again in Melbourne, so he's going to be there anyway, but he's there just in case. And if he has to take a step out of Formula 2 for a couple of weekends in a row, that wouldn't be ideal for his Formula 2 campaign this season, especially because he was on pole last time out in Jeddah in Formula 2, but a great race in Formula 1 as he did, obviously far more impactful than a decent campaign in Formula 2, but as Carlos Sainz, here he is in the paddock, right? So expected to race this weekend, that is most certainly the plan. Speaking of Ferrari though, 2 senior Ferrari staff members are going the way of Mercedes. Finally, Mercedes are actually doing something, right? We have seen over the last several years, Mercedes have lost lots of staff to Red Bull, to Ferrari, to so many other teams. The same is now occurring with Red Bull as well. Lots of their top guys are going elsewhere, as we shall discuss some further possibilities of here in a second. Ferrari also hiring big time from other teams over the last 12 months or so, and a couple of guys are actually going to go the other way. So this is Simone Resta and also Enrico Sampo that will be joining and will work directly with James Allison on the Mercedes project from 2025. Contractual terms, gardening leave, that type of stuff means that their exact dates of arrival not quite yet decided. But yeah, Sampo has been their lead driver simulator team leader. Simone Resta has worked on their car for a long time really. This is his tenure with Ferrari for borderline 20 years. He went to Sauber for a little while. He then was technical director at Haas from 21 to 24, came back to Ferrari very briefly, and is now going to be joining Mercedes. So definitely a top quality engineer from everyone's assessment really, especially his work on the car in, let's say, 2017, 2018 was given lots of praise, but you know, they weren't able to maintain that challenge to Mercedes over the course of the season, but they made it very competitive, especially at the start of those respective years. So Simone Resta is going to go to Mercedes, that is the plan. Of course, there are other characters such as Loic Serra going the other way. So teams making changes, teams trying to make acquisitions, and of course, if you are Mercedes, you are seeing all the chaos unfold at Red Bull. Toto Wolff has said this over the last few days. They need to prove, Mercedes, they can still build a competent Formula 1 car, because if you can attract the Max Verstappens of this world. Given that Red Bull is far from guaranteed to be a stable destination for the years to come with everything that is currently ongoing, and we'll discuss more details on that in a second. Just one quick thing on Mercedes. This weekend is massive for them. They need to understand what went on with their car in Jeddah, whether it's actually fixable going forward. Rumour has it they brought a floor upgrade for the Bahrain Grand Prix that wasn't run in testing, because in testing, their car performed as they expected it to. The Bahrain Grand Prix wasn't too dissimilar, but they did also have all those cooling problems that cost them loads of time, and they weren't as competitive in qualifying there as maybe they thought they would be. So there's a potential theory that this new floor might have introduced an unintended side effect, which if it is unintended, that's pretty bad news anyway, just because, well, they've added something which has broken their car. But I guess if they were to remove it, the car gets better again in theory, but then of course it's understanding, well, if that is the reason, then why and how can they ensure that does not happen again? We've got to talk about the Red Bull stuff because, you know, there's been more calls for Horner to effectively resign, step away. Johnny Herbert says, look, Horner's made the statements over the last couple of weeks, nobody is bigger than the team, and therefore Johnny Herbert's saying, well, if you really believe that, Horner, maybe it's for the best of your team that you step away. But clearly that is not in his individual best interests based on what we understand is going on behind the scenes. There was also a meeting between Red Bull's CEO Oliver Mintzlaff, here he is on the left-hand side, and Ferrari chairman John Elkann, who has been pulling a lot of strings, shall we say, behind the scenes over the last several months. Of course, getting the Hamilton deal done was very much chiefly involved in that. The apparent discussion was on the Concord agreement, the new agreement they're going to be coming up with around an 11th team. The idea is if an 11th team wants to come in, how much money do they have to pay to dilute or to counter, let's say, the dilution effect of having a new team coming in with the revenues getting split 11 ways rather than 10. That's a discussion point. We don't really know what else was discussed, but one can maybe speculate on certain activities that may be happening right now within Red Bull. And this is when we have some further discussion here on the potential Adrian Newey to Ferrari situation, because we talked about this a few days ago that there was a rumour that Ferrari, I mean, obviously they'd be interested in getting Newey, but if there was ever a time to take away some big names from Red Bull, now is the opportunity to make that happen. This is coming out of Build, so, you know, arguably questionable reputation as far as journalistic integrity goes, but we'll discuss it anyway because it's pretty interesting, especially this whole piece here on the Mateschitz-Javidja angle. So, of course, Mateschitz passed away in late 2022 from pancreatic cancer. Here he is, of course, on the left-hand side of the age of 78. Now, this is how they describe the power struggle, and I haven't really heard it described in quite these terms previously. So, Javidja, who had been silent due to the contract and ever-increasing profits, is now exercising his power and has allied himself with Horner, and the games began. Horner wanted to get rid of Marco, I guess is what that's trying to mean, the man who built the Formula 1 team with Mateschitz, the man who had saved Horner from expulsion several times. Mateschitz wasn't a friend of his team boss. It doesn't seem like Dietrich Mateschitz and Christian Horner necessarily saw eye to eye, but let him have his way because of their successes and a good word from Marco. But all of a sudden, the Marco-Horner relationship is now rather strained, to say the very least. Then this comes back to the Porsche thing, and this was actually a big talking point of a few days ago now, that this Porsche relationship was meant to be happening, right? We thought they were going to take like a 50% stake in Red Bull, but Horner apparently vetoed it, who didn't agree with the equal footing partnership, only wanted to accept Porsche as an engine supplier. This really annoyed the then Red Bull boss, of course Dietrich Mateschitz, but he was so weakened by his illness that he could no longer intervene. 4 weeks after the failure with Porsche, Mateschitz, of course, passed away. All insiders agree on one thing: if he was still here today, as in Mateschitz, Horner would have been fired by now, but his death immediately shifted the balance of power. So this is again the talking point in terms of Horner trying to gather more control of the organisation. He definitely did not want to, for his own personal ambitions, allow Porsche to take a big stake in the team. That was not in his best interest. Was it in the team's best interests? That, I suppose, is another debate entirely, but it didn't happen. And as we scroll down here past the Javidja family, we now see further discussions on the Horner relationship with these guys. Horner initially wanted shares in the Red Bull Racing team, similar to Toto Wolff at Mercedes, as we have said multiple times on the channel. That, though, failed. However, he did secure marketing rights from AlphaTauri. The Brit wanted, and wants more, as of course you do. He is already CEO of Red Bull Racing, but as we hear from close circles, he seems to have set his sights on the position of CEO of Red Bull entirely, or at least the entire technology part of the division. So the positions of Oliver Mintzlaff, Franz Watzlawick, who we mentioned a few days ago, and this other finance boss, he wants at least one, if not multiple, of those jobs. And of course, to make that happen, Horner needs the now very powerful Thai owner, Mr. Javidja. And he's trying to convince Mr. Javidja that they don't necessarily need Verstappen or Adrian Newey to make this happen. Horner believes that he can build up the team again himself. Maybe he's right in part, but I don't think it's worth underestimating the importance of those two individuals to that team. So with all that said, it then raises new questions as to if there was ever a time for Verstappen to depart, especially because Marco and Horner clearly are not seeing eye to eye anymore. Verstappen says if Marco goes, I'm going to go. Verstappen's made that very clear indeed. Jos Verstappen feels the same way, and Adrian Newey is getting offers from all over the place. His cars have won 25 world titles. The talks between Newey and Ferrari appear to be well advanced. With this step, Newey would fulfill two wishes. He's reportedly said that he would like to work with Hamilton or Ferrari before he retires. So that's what Build are saying, that they are well advanced conversations between Newey and Ferrari. But of course, he has other offers as well. And this is where we get into the real bombshell I thought of yesterday on this Aston Martin stuff. So Donadoni with Formula Uno, they are very close with Ferrari. He says the offer from Ferrari has reached him, Newey, and substantial too. I'm sure it is substantial. However, it may not be the most substantial offer that he is receiving right now, Adrian Newey, and we shall discuss why. But it remains to be seen what he will choose, because he has no shortage of other offers. Like, every team would love to have Newey. Realistically, he would only join, if he was to leave Red Bull, another top team. And the big issue with Newey joining Ferrari, really, as with many other engineers, is the relocation to Italy. You know, Newey's 65. Got a family. It's not something that you necessarily want to be doing unless they make you an offer you can't refuse. If there was a similar level of financial offering, but you could be based in the UK still, that might be rather attractive, and that's when we get to this story around Aston Martin. So the other day I mentioned to you guys that there was a rumour going around that if Max Verstappen were to depart from Red Bull due to all the reasons we've discussed over the last few days and even in this video, Aston Martin is not a team to necessarily be overlooked. Mercedes seem to be sliding, they don't really understand their car, Hamilton's leaving, doesn't send the greatest picture. Aston Martin, on the other hand, have some things in their favour. They actually, this season, have a reasonably competitive car. In qualifying pace, they have the third fastest on average so far. That hasn't been reflected in race trim, but they have further upgrades to bring. Yes, they were very competitive last season. Ferrari have now taken a step forward this year, but, you know, they're not miles off the pace, and they have been more competitive in qualifying than Mercedes have so far, is certainly one thing to look at. But also, the Honda partnership. This is what I mentioned the other day as a key driving factor, that Verstappen might think, you know what, Aston Martin have made so much investment into their team. They've got this brand new facility, brand new factory, brand new wind tunnel, hiring loads of top technical staff if they have done over the last few years, made massive strides as a team already, certainly more to come with the Honda Works partnership. They'll be the only team on the grid in 2026 powered by Honda, the engine that is currently powering Verstappen to dominant success in the Red Bull. Because of course Red Bull have their own thing, Red Bull powertrains with Ford going on in 2026, that the feeling is might not be as strong as the Mercedes, the Ferrari, or certainly the Honda offerings. And that's a Works deal. No more worrying about rear suspensions from Mercedes, no more worrying about Mercedes gearboxes that might not work with your car concept. None of those problems exist anymore. And that's quite compelling, but it's still not Mercedes, right? It's still Aston Martin. However, it becomes rather more compelling if the money is ludicrous. So this is the discussion, and obviously we just had the Jeddah Grand Prix. It's been talked about now for some time that Lawrence Stroll, he actually sold a percentage of the team, a minority stake, a little while ago now, back in November. So that kind of indicated that Lawrence Stroll is at least considering selling up and getting out, right? And it might make sense. Stroll's done a great job building up that team over the last few years. Is he going to be the man to lead them over the next decades to being world championship winners? He'd love that. He'd love his son to win the title. But the reality is that's not going to be happening, and you might need more money. And if more money comes along, which there is money out there, maybe it's difficult to say no to. So Aramco, of course, who are owned by the Saudi state, effectively, the oil company over there, certainly the big one, they have been partnered with Aston Martin now for some time. They're their headline company, Aston Martin, Aramco Formula One team, whatever it technically is. They are now the title sponsor of the green team from the winter, and they have a massive presence. Apparently, in Jeddah last weekend, it became clear that Saudi interest in a massive commitment is growing. The giant, Aramco, is controlled directly by the state and is therefore connected to a fund established to promote the country in the world, also through large acquisitions. You've got to understand, this Saudi Arabian public investment funds is practically bottomless in terms of money. Like, it is almost infinite, the amount of money that the Saudi Arabians have to work with if they want to, and they are making big acquisitions everywhere you look, in sports, in esports, in everything you can possibly think about, the Saudis are interested in. They're clearly interested in Formula One. They're building this massive, cool circuit in Qadiyah in a couple of years' time, and potentially they'll try and have both Jeddah and Qadiyah on the calendar at the end of the decade. Now, whatever you think about this as a potential future of the sport, it doesn't change the fact that the money is limitless within reason. And this has been the discussion. It is said that the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix was the ideal ground for confidentially approaching some very high profiles, characters, whatever, persons, analysing the feasibility and promising blank cheques for future engagements in due course. As in, you write your number on this piece of paper and we'll give you the money. In the perspective of great development, Red Bull's heavyweights are in the sights. Triple world champion Max Verstappen and, of course, design genius Adrian Newey. This seems like a strong acceleration compared to positions of just a few months ago. As known, the budget cap that the teams must adhere to excludes the hiring of the 3 senior figures indicated, in addition to the drivers. And this is the funny thing I would say about the cost cap in general, is that if you want to have 1,500 employees in your company, you have to pay them not not that much to comply with the cost cap. Like, they are getting paid pretty basic salaries for how good these people are as engineers, 50k, 70k, 80k, 100k, I don't know, something in that kind of ballpark for some of the employees for sure. Whereas for those that are excluded from the cap, so the top 3 owners plus the drivers, they can earn in the multi, if not tens, if not hundreds of millions theoretically. Rumor has it Hamilton is effectively going to get paid. Now, some of that is charity related stuff, but effectively Ferrari are going to pay Hamilton 100 million euros or something to be there every year for his contract at Ferrari. Saudi Arabia, if they do say to Lawrence Stroll, hey, we're just going to buy your team, like we're going to become the Aramco Formula 1 team, maybe it's still going to be Aston Martin branded in some way so that they can continue to help the car company, but they may well go to Lawrence Stroll and say, yeah, this is what we are going to do, we're going to pay you this amount of money and we're going to buy your team. And then they're going to go to Max Verstappen, they're going to go to Adrian Newey with all the chaos that is currently ongoing and say, look, Mr. Verstappen, Mr. Newey, we have this great team we're building, we've made massive progress over the last few years. We've got this full Honda relationship come 2026 and beyond. We are the richest Formula 1 team now because we have infinite money. We can pay you literally whatever you would like. $1 billion a year, $3 billion a year. We'll give you what you like. And also, Mr. Newey, you get to stay in the UK and we can pay you. What did Ferrari offer you? Yeah, we can triple that. We can 5x that. We can 10x that. So do not rule this out as a feasible possibility. I think there was a few years ago, people would say, in the world of golf and in other sports, like, the Saudis are showing some interest, but it's never really going to be a big thing. Now they've got the whole live golf thing and they've attracted many top players with massive amounts of money. And that is not going to be changing. And even Alonso just today tweeted this out. Great to spend time with the next generation of racers and engineers in Riyadh. A pleasure to work with Aramco and Aston Martin F1 team, right? So you see lots of this stuff lately, and it's quite clear the direction that they're currently moving in. So lots of reaction to this. Max getting that €1 billion Mbappe contract offer, because this is the type of stuff that they will offer. And look, it's not all about the money, obviously, but if you're Max or if you're Newey or if you're someone in that ballpark and you get offered an attractive prospect, not even just about the money, but also in terms of a reasonably competitive outfit on paper, something different as well to where they've currently been working, and there are plenty of push factors from Red Bull already. And, this I thought was pretty funny as well. Ferrari were just given Hamilton the biggest contract ever, hold my oil, 180 million contract, that's just for Newey, that's not even for Max. So very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Just a couple of things to mention before we close out the video here. This was kind of interesting. The last 50 street races, going back, I think, to Australia 2020 or 2013, right, when Kimi won with Lotus, I think. That technically Australia was a street track. It's kind of like a hybrid, but technically we call it a street track generally. It makes sense. You can drive on those roads in normal times. That was the last time that a team that wasn't Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari actually won a street track. These are the last 50. We see some Red Bulls dotted in. We see some Ferraris dotted in. The last several races, of course, have been relatively consistent in terms of the winner. Hamilton has 12 victories out of the last 50. Verstappen already has 11. Vettel, Rosberg, Perez. Actually, Perez with 5, fair enough. Ricciardo, of course, on here as well. And these are also the timings for this weekend in the UK. I believe the reason why it's so much earlier this year is because if you guys remember last year, the drivers were complaining a lot, and probably for good reason, about the lighting. The sun was so low in the sky, they could barely see anything. So they agreed to actually bring back the race by an hour, bring back qualifying by an hour, I think, as well. So the timings now as follows, at least in the UK. Practice, look, I'm not going to be getting up to watch practice, I'll be honest. 5 a.m. for qualifying on Saturday, and then 4 a.m. race start on the Sunday. So that is pretty early. I think if you're in the US, it'll be probably exactly midnight on the East Coast, because there's only 4 hours right now because of daylight savings. Something like that, unless it changes this upcoming weekend. I always kind of forget this time of year. It gets kind of complicated with time zones. But yeah, if you guys are from the UK, those are the rather challenging time zones for us. But we get it good every other race of the year, so can't really complain. But hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.